Right, I just aborted one attempt at this and then thought, well, it looked like I was in the right group, so I don't know what is going on, but I am going to try again. Welcome, my friends, because I deleted the last one. So if you did catch it and now confused, I apologise. But welcome. Here we are. It is the 27th of March 2024 here in New Zealand, 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. This is Chat with Matt. Welcome. Just before I get too far into this, I will endeavour to go to the right group, right light beings group, and see that I'm on live would be great. Okay, there I am. Perfect. So yes, what was I saying before I deleted this? Okay, there's the questions. There's me on live. I've been having amazing, vivid dreams lately. I can't say I've been sleeping particularly refreshingly. I won't say it's not good sleep because I think it's productive, but it's a little disturbing, reliving a whole heap of situations. Well, not reliving the exact situation, but sort of revisiting past relationships with all sorts of situations in my life. Anywho's, it's sort of been ongoing, processing fears. Last night was a doozy, revisiting my yoga past, guru-disciple relationship, singing bhajans, doing the things that I wasn't good at, whatever, getting put on the spot. It seems so real, seems so vivid. But anyway, that's all part of the clearing experience, I am sure. So we're on the other side of a full moon lunar eclipse. That was, I guess, just about 3 days ago. When did that happen? Was it Monday night? Tuesday night? No, was that only 2 days ago? Anyway, we've had a full moon lunar eclipse. It wasn't a full eclipse. It was just a penumbral, or however you're supposed to say that. Hey, Sue Ann. So yes, we've had the eclipse, we've had the equinox, we're moving towards another eclipse. The weather is crazy here at the moment. The energy, we've had all these solar flares, huge auroras happening here in the southern parts of New Zealand. Not that I'm in the southern parts. But yeah, a lot of solar activity and a lot of people, and myself included, feeling run over, really. A little bit beaten up. My body is really sore, which is unusual. Right in that spot, right in my C7, which is, I was sore there for almost a year before I started channeling. So in 2013, it's not loading, said Susan. It should be working okay on my side. I'm hooked straight into the internet on my cable. So, but unfortunately, the things with live streams is, it can be a little bit funny coming through Facebook. And if it is, then the replay works really well. Unfortunately, though, it's not so easy to interact with me on the replay. I would love some interaction because it helps me deliver a conversation. So yeah, really sore in the body. I know Marie, my wife, is feeling the same. She's got sore in all parts of body as well. I'm not sure if that's just from the solar flares or whatever, but it's weird, quote unquote, pertaining to the supernatural. Things are happening that don't seem logical. That's basically what weird is, which is good. I think it's time to move past the logic. It's time to move past being ruled by cause and effect. However, that is a little bit concerning for our mentality that has been well and truly entrained into believing in cause and effect, linearity, things happening for logical reasons, and the desire to want to be able to predict what's going to happen next so that we feel that we're prepared for it, which is a big one for us humans. But we have to let that go. We have to let it go because it's holding us back. Hey, Susie. Have to let go of wanting to be able to predict what's going to happen next. So we have to let go of wanting things to stay linear and logical because it's a limitation. It is a big limitation. And the truth is that we're getting shaken out of it. And if you want something to be the way that it's not, you're always going to feel, well, disappointed at best, but out of control and in danger, threatened, right? Threatened. Quite often, that things aren't happening the way that you think that they should. And so the more that you can let go of the way that they think that you should, then the more easily you will accept the way that they are. And the point is, accepting the way that they are is a dynamic process, because the way that they are, things, that is, the way that things are, is always changing, as it should. So, you know, a lot of people think that if you accept something, then it'll settle down to that and that's what you've got. It's not true. Things will keep evolving, things will keep changing. And so the more that you can relax into the changeable nature of our universe and the changeable nature of our society right now, the better off you're going to be, because you will be able to relax more. And when you relax more, you're able to see things in a more expansive, from a more expansive mentality. And if you can hold a more expansive mentality, then you can hold space for all sorts of options that are maybe really beneficial for you and the experience, but maybe out of your normal, quote unquote, entrained expectations. So that's it, really. That's the process of ascension, is expanding your expectations, is opening yourself up to the ability to accept more of the magic of the universe, right? And more of the magic of yourself, right? More of the reality of who you be, and less of the confined story or narrative of being a human, right? And what that entails. Because being a human is only an extension of us. It's not the totality of us. And the more that we can recognize that, the more that we can bring our brilliance or our divinity or our magnificent true nature into the human, into and through the human experience. So the human experience actually evolves into something more magical or expansive or soul aligned. Trying to pick some words that make some sense, but that's the process, right? That's the process of ascension. You know, that's what the great masters have achieved in the past, is allowing more of themselves to be present in and through their human experience, right? You know, like Jesus did, as an example. Blasphemy, they all screamed. So let's get on to some questions. Sister Kelly popped in on the notification. That's me standing in front of probably a 500-year-old kauri tree, kauri pine, which was once an extensive species over a lot of the north half of the North Island of New Zealand, but it got logged to decimation. And there's some still really nice big ones out on Great Barrier Island, where we're going to be doing a retreat in November. Anywho, very, very wise trees, but they also contained a lot of sadness, because they had witnessed pretty much the widespread destruction of their species on that island, and there are only a few pockets of remnant forest, which was interesting when you really commune with them. They had a sadness, but they also had a beautiful hope for the future, because the forest on Great Barrier is regenerating really, really well, mainly because there's not so many grazing pests out there, including possums. They never took possums out onto Great Barrier Island. And for those of you who don't know, the Australian brush-tailed possum is a massive pest in New Zealand. They brought them over here whenever, 150 years ago or something like that, to create a fur trade, and unleashed the widespread destruction of or at least suppression of the New Zealand native forest, because the possums, which are used to eating eucalypts in Australia, which are much harder to digest, really thrived on New Zealand vegetation, trees, and have bred to massive numbers and eat the bush, and thus create problems for all of the native birds, etc., and also eat the eggs. But anyway, Susie said, well done, Matt. Well done. Well said, Matt. So getting out of the contraction of just being a human. Yeah, I put in quotation marks around just, right? Just being a human, so that we recognize that we're more than just a human, and we can expand out to encompass more of us. Susie said also, I find when I do that, I can move through things more easily. Exactly. That's what it's about. It's about enjoying life. This is not about, I'm not telling you what you need to do in order to get it good, right, and proper, in order to succeed, in order to win the favor of some external power so that you will be granted your wish of getting off the earth experience. A lot of people want to make this their last life because they're tired of this experience and being here and the density, etc., etc. I get it. I was there. And so trying to get it right this time, talking about, because I was just talking earlier in the call about how I'm reprocessing a lot of stuff from my yoga past and stuff with my guru, Swamiji, etc., etc. And that was the great sell, right? If I get it right and if I keep doing my practices, not that I regret doing my practices, it led me to a degree of connection with myself and with what you might call the divine. But if I just get it right, if I just do it more diligently, if I just apply all of that discipline to my practices, then I will be rewarded with realization and won't need to come back, right, and do this whole thing again. So that was a big driver for me to get going on the spiritual path. And now I've sort of expanded out of that and recognize I'm here to enjoy it. It's not about getting it right so I don't have to come back. It's about getting to the stage where I don't mind coming back. And when I get there, then I won't need to come back. That's the point, right? So rather than getting it right so I don't need to come back, it's about getting to the place where I am actually enjoying living in a human body on the planet. And at that point, there's no need to come back. But it's not a big goal anymore because you don't mind coming back because you're actually enjoying it. You've mastered the human experience. And by master, you can take that off a pedestal. It's basically just relaxing into accepting the experience and being able to enjoy it as you move through it in a more relaxed, expansive, purposeful way. Anywho's, I was going to read Kelly's question. I got distracted by the trees and then circled round. Anyway, Kelly said, some questions. How about ways of clearing fear, or I might put in clearing the fear of people blaming or yelling at you? That's one. And how about clearing the resistance to feeling good so that we can share gifts and be visible? The fear, clearing the resistance to feeling good, and the fear of people blaming / yelling at you or us, right? Okay. It's interesting because as I've progressed, this almost leads into the other question that I've got from someone that came in via email. But I'll stick with this for just a moment and then I'll segue back to that and then we'll probably answer both in the same time. But the whole idea of clearing fears, I think, is a distortion. It's a cell. Hey, Sister Diane. It's a cell that's, quite common, but I don't believe it's a very empowered way of looking at the process of spiritual evolution. I don't believe we, quote unquote, clear fear. I don't believe we really clear resistance. Although clearing resistance in my vernacular makes more sense, but not in clearing it away, but clearing it as in jumping it, right, as you clear a hurdle. It's more of that sort of clear than the idea of cleaning, right? I don't believe we clean away the fear of people blaming us. I believe we expand out of allowing the fear of people blaming us overly influence us, right? So rather than wanting the fear to go away so that then you feel that you can move into situations without being nervous that you're going to get blamed at or yelled at, or worried that if people do yell at you, you'll go into a stress response, e.g. freeze or fawn or whatever, or flee. There's another one that I've forgotten, but it doesn't matter. The idea that it's, I think it's important to recognize that some of us have a lot of trauma around being blamed. and getting it wrong, because it's led to situations where we've been really, really uncomfortable. To put it lightly, right? We've been tortured, persecuted, killed, etc. And the process of that happening started with someone blaming us and yelling at us, and then a mob forming, and then us getting dragged off to the square, and etc. Right? Basically being persecuted for being ourselves. So there's a lot of trauma around this experience of being yelled at, or feeling that someone is not appreciating us, or blaming us, right? So we recognize there's a lot of trauma there. And the more that you can recognize that that's in the past, the easier it's going to be for you to move through the experience of having that triggered. You can't hide from your triggers, in my opinion. And you don't need to necessarily clear them away so they don't exist anymore before you can live comfortably. There is a middle path where we slowly but surely get stronger at being triggered and not allowing it to overly induce a stress response, because we start to entrain ourselves into the mentality. It becomes stronger in us, the mentality that this triggering experience is in itself a clearing experience, and we don't need to clear the triggers away or clear the fears away to avoid that experience. Even though that experience is uncomfortable and concerning for us when we get triggered, and we become unable, I think is the right word, unable to respond to the situation as we would like, because now we're in a triggered state and we're dealing with all of our stress hormones, and then that sort of perpetuates this fear that if someone yells at us, we're going to go into stress, and then we're not going to be able to act well, and then they can take advantage of us, right? They can keep abusing us, which is what is at the root of the trauma from the past, right? Being abused for basically the person that we be when we weren't choosing to conform, or we were sort of unable again to conform with the dictates of the authorities at the time, right? Because we're inherently of the light and weren't able to bend ourselves, or were unwilling to bend ourselves into being compliant in dark periods of time. Thus, the sort of shadow masculine patriarchy authority persecuted us, right? To beat us down and to create all of this fear in our field, and disempower us, so that we weren't a problem for them in shining our light and awakening others around us, right? In periods of deep darkness. Those times are gone and we're moving on, although the residues are still there, which is what Kelly's talked about. How do we clear this fear, so that I can feel more empowered in myself, right? And the point is to become more empowered while still feeling fearful, right? And I know people think that empowered means you don't feel fear anymore, and it's not. Empowered and confident people still feel fear. They still have triggers, but they have learnt to move beyond them, right? To overcome them as they happen. It's not that they're cleared away, that they no longer happen. It's that they feel triggered and have managed to strengthen their ability to regulate their nervous system to a point where it doesn't put them into a complete stress response, and therefore they can still respond even if it's under some sort of duress, and move forward. And the more that they do that, right, the more that you build the understanding in yourself that these triggers no longer have power over you, because you can do your best to overcome them when they happen, and therefore they start to lessen their influence, right? You become less fearful of them because you have moved beyond them successfully, or at least partially successfully, multiple times, right? As we have more and more successes, we ingrain this habit, or this belief that these fears no longer hold us back. So, and the same, it's interesting, the resistance to feeling good. So many of us resist the feeling of good, right? Which is basically the feeling of comfort. It's the feeling of relaxation, or the feeling of peace, I think is what you're talking about, right? Feeling confident in yourself, feeling peaceful, feeling safe almost, right? This feeling good is about feeling safe and comfortable and being able to relax into being yourself. There's a resistance to doing that because in choosing to feel safe, you feel vulnerable. You feel vulnerable that you're not on guard looking for where the next danger is coming. And someone who's experienced a lot of persecution in the past, always not wanting that to happen again, you are entrained into the idea that to stay safe means to stay on guard, which is a state of stress, right? Looking for threats, looking for danger, looking for how things are going to go wrong, and preparing yourself for those. Not wanting to feel good, not wanting to feel relaxed and comfortable because you fear that will disappoint you more when shit inevitably turns up and goes wrong. So you're right, there's a lot of resistance around actually relaxing into feeling good. And again, I don't believe anyone or anything, including yourself, can just basically clear that, right? It's a process of expanding out of allowing that to overly influence you. And that is a step-by-step, slow grind of intentional behavior where you choose to do your best to feel good despite your resistance to it. And you recognize the game that you are playing with the residues of energy from your history, right? That you need to keep provoking these feelings of fear of being yelled at or resistance to feeling good so that you get the chance to act despite the resistance, to act despite the triggers. Because the more that you get to play on the edge, the stronger you become, right? You're training yourself. You are practicing. Spiritual practices are practices because we have to keep doing them in order to strengthen ourselves so that we get more capable of doing them. And slowly but surely we expand, and slowly but surely the pool of fear and the influence that it has over us, or the resistances that are in our field, become less and less influential. They become more weak or less important in our life, right? Less, I think influential is the best word to use there. So we change the ratios slowly but surely of how influential, hey Sister Georgie, of how influential this stuff from the past is, and how powerful or empowered we are. So this is going to segue into the next question. So I'm going to just quickly open my email so that I get this right, because I have a terrible habit of paraphrasing things. So this was an email that I got. Could you please speak about times we are in regarding distortion and inversion? Inversion's an interesting word, it means upside down. How even most spiritual information is distorted despite good intentions and unawareness. Okay, so it's an interesting question. I'm going to just flip back to this so that I can see any questions going on here if I miss them on the screen. So can I speak to the distortion that we're currently in? Well, first of all, so basically, I was going to add this into what we're talking about. This idea of clear away fears, clear away traumas, clear away the past. The way that has been sold to us by a lot of the spiritual community, including me in the past, right? I'm, bought into this idea, and I used to dedicate a lot of my work to clearing away stuff. And I get it. We can help to shake the residues of discordant energy or distorted energy out of fields, right? That's what I do with the light language. That's what I do with my intention. That's what I do with my vibration, is I help to clear or radiate through people to help shift stuff. But while that helps, overall, I think the whole idea or the narrative, the story around clear this, clear that, is distorted, and distorted in a way that disempowers us as individuals. It's like, because if you are expecting things to be cleared, then there's an expectation that they're gone. And then when you experience some form of what you wanted to be cleared, you feel that the clearing failed, right? And therefore you are not free yet. This idea of freedom being sort of absolute, and that clear is absolute, I think is a big distortion. And it's very, very common in people that if they experience some of it, they then think that it's all still there, right? As opposed to this idea that everything is partial, everything is in increments, and it's a long journey. And the point is, we don't need to get to completion in order to have our freedom, right? Because freedom is relative to now. So when you feel more free, you are free, right? It's more free as opposed to completely free, because no one on this planet is completely free of their past. No one is. And that's okay. That's the point, right? We don't need to be completely free. We don't need to completely clear the fear of being yelled at or blamed before we can interact with people in a more empowered way and hold our own in interactions, right? Talking back to Kelly's first question. So the point is, it's like a distortion, whether it's happened deliberately to create a disempowered relationship with this idea of spiritual progression, right? That, oh, I've cleared my fear of whatever, so now I can move forward, or whether it's just human psychological, based on the period of time that we've been through, where we've become so mental and so almost digital, right? Things are yes or no, on or off. We're reductionist mentality of yes, no, right, wrong, clear, unclear. No, that hasn't been cleared yet. We need to work some more. That is clear now. You're free of that, right? Let's muscle test that. Yes, you're clear, right? I get it, and telling someone they're clear of something helps to expand their energy, which will help them move forward, but invariably it will trigger what is not yet clear, quote unquote, to come up, and then they'll feel that there's been a failure and they need to go back and work on it again. And while it's true, you need to keep, quote unquote, working on these things, it's not working on it to be clear of it, it's working on it as you expand out of it. It's working through it rather than on it to be clear of it. So there's a lot of distortions. The question was, can I talk about the period we are in and this sort of distortion inversion? I think everything is distorted, and everything always will be to some degree. Because distorted from what? The absolute truth. What is the absolute truth? I saw a poster on Facebook the other day, which was ridiculing this idea that there's individual truths, and there's only one truth. Personally, I think that's a very narrow way of looking at the world. While I get a lot of people speak in a way that, oh, I'm speaking my truth, which is really they're just telling you their opinion. But their opinion is true to them in the moment. That's the point. A lot of people want to put this word truth on a big pedestal where it doesn't really belong. So, things are true and false, right? Going back to this reductionist mentality of yes and no. What's the point I'm trying to make here? So everything is levels of distortion from my perspective, right? We're all witnessing the world and interacting with the world through our own filters. We all have an individuality with this, and you can say that, well, that's distorted, right? It's distorted. Everything's distorted based on your filters, which are based on your past and how that has influenced you. So, but that's okay. That's okay. And it's also, and speaking at a deeper level, there are some major distortions going on that are being utilized by very powerful entities on this planet to maintain control, right? And so many of these distortions, including the sort of pseudo-spiritual, and we're all guilty, right? I'm guilty too. Don't think that I'm beyond, the pseudo-spiritual talk and toxic positivity and all of these concepts that are being influenced by energies that aren't necessarily here for our best good, quote unquote. Without feeling like a victim of all of that, it's part of the game. A lot of spiritual organizations, a lot of alternate organizations, a lot of environmental organizations have been influenced by various, what's the right word to use here? I could use dark, I could use whatever, agendas, right, have been infiltrated and are influenced by all sorts of people who are trying to keep things in fear, basically, in reaction. So there's a lot of distortion out there in the world, and we can't escape it. That's the point. And we don't need to escape it. And we don't need to see past the distortion, although it's beneficial to recognize that everything is distorted, including your own view on everything, so that you can work with this concept and help yourself expand out of the simplistic idea that things are yes and no, and the conclusions that you have generated around what's the right thing to do. Because all concepts, in my opinion, should keep evolving, right? My concept around clearing and my concept of how to work with fears and resistances should keep evolving. I don't know the truth, quote unquote, yet. As a person, keep having experiences, my perception and my conceptualization of a lot of issues or a lot of interactions or a lot of things is going to keep evolving, as it should. That's the process. That's why I'm here in a human body, to evolve, right? To have experiences that gain wisdom. And so you don't have to get overly contracted around the fact that a lot of the spiritual community is distorted, right? And a lot of what they are saying is holding people back in various layers of fear and confusion, and creating a lot of stress, right, in the ideas of how things should progress and should evolve. Naturally, I think if we keep choosing to relax our nervous system and keep choosing to align our vibration with more of the truth of who we be, I'll just use that word truth again, more of the energy of who we be, then we will start to see things that are distorted. And rather than getting upset by it, rather than thinking we need to fix it again, it's like going back to Kelly's question, how do we clear the fear of being yelled at? We don't. You don't clear that fear. You expand out of it so that it doesn't influence you so much. And then you basically can start to progress into situations where people might yell at you, but you are no longer going to initiate a stress response if they do, because you've been yelled at enough times and realized that it's not as dangerous as the fear in you is making out, right? Your past traumas are influencing you. By having successive experiences of facing your past traumas without having the negative effect that you had in the past, e.g. being locked away and tortured or killed, etc., then you can let go of the stress response that has been associated with the fear. Same, right? As we start to see the distortions out there in the world, we don't fear them so much, right? Because we accept that this is how we are as a society navigating the expansion out of this authoritarian control where things have been deliberately distorted in order to keep the population disempowered, in order to keep the population in fear, in order to keep the population stressed, so which is basically in fear, right? Because you're stressed when you're worried something's going to go wrong. You're stressed when you think something is going wrong inside you or around you or etc., right? That's what basically stress is. The fear of a bad outcome. The fear of you dying creates stress. The fear of, ridicule, the fear of being yelled at creates stress because it's wrong. That's something, this idea of wrong. So we don't need to clear away the distortion in order to live in a more expansive society. Us as individuals, as we no longer become overly influenced by distorted information and distorted doctrines and distorted pathways, right, told how we should do the world, including clearing away fears and etc., right, as we work with the distortions and the way that things are being influenced in an empowered way, then we will move forward. It's not our place to take away the distortions so that the rest of the population don't get to have the experience of expanding out of distortion, right? And recognizing that distortion is inherent to the earth plane experience, right, and the human experience, because we're distorting everything as it comes through our eyes and is processed by our brain, right? Because our brain processes in ways where we are always referencing the past in order to make sense of what's happening now. We name objects based on historically what this has been called in the past, right? I've been trained by my parents and my upbringing that this is called a mug or a cup. It's really a mug, right? I think a cup is smaller, but right. And so we have an idea of that based on the past. And that's the same with everything, right? We're always referencing the past in order to make sense of the now. And that inherently leads to distortion, because our memories of the past are influenced by what we were feeling at that time, based on a whole heap of stuff, which includes referencing the past at the time when we were experiencing that past, right? The past has influencing things all the way through. So your past was influenced by your past at that time, right? Which meant you were feeling emotional when you had an experience of something in the past. Now you're referencing that now to make sense of what's happening, and of course that is distorted based on this succession of past experiences. So it's okay. That's we're here on this planet with that understanding, right? As souls, we've come in with the understanding that that's how it happens here, and that is actually an opportunity for us to have experiences that are beyond what we can have in other places, and that helps us to gain some wisdom and experience things in new ways that is useful for us as a soul being. So I've just looked at the time. I've been chatting away here for much longer than I usually do. So I don't believe you need to worry about clearing distortion or even fixing the distortion. I think awareness is basically on the rise. And the more that you keep choosing to align yourself with what feels good, right in your heart, and relaxing through the experience of being triggered consistently, then everything, you will basically expand out of being overly influenced by the distortions. And as you do so, you will create pathways for others to do so. We don't need to tackle or fight the distortion that's happening, whether it's deliberate or simply a symptom of this reoccurring past and the way that we've all been indoctrinated and the way most of us operate from fear, at least most of the time. And it is rife in the spiritual community as it is everywhere else, right? Distortion and fear-based ways of doing things, the idea that one way's right and the other way's wrong, delusion is very, very present in all sorts of ways. And even those who have great fame and acclaim as spiritual people have just as much distortion, if not more, than others on this planet, it seems. So it's not a popularity contest. And I'm not claiming that I'm anywhere near beyond distortion. What I've just told you is all distorted by my opinions and my past and my experiences. So take it all with a big fat grain of salt and allow yourself to not get contracted, not get stressed about what's distortion and what's not, what's true and what's not. Nothing's true. It's all distorted. Relax, right? Nothing's under control. It's like that. Keep calm. Nothing's under control. That's the human experience. It's a roller coaster here. Have fun with the fact that you're in a house of mirrors, right? Those crazy mirrors, those distorted mirrors, where nothing looks the way that it really is, right? It's skinny or it's wobbly or it's fat or it's whatever, right? We're looking at the world through a house of mirrors. Many of them are distorted. So yeah, keep calm and carry on, but do it with as much awareness as you can without trying too hard to be aware, right? Without contracting yourself into wondering at everything. Oh, is it a distortion? Yeah, it's a distortion. The point is, does it serve you now or not? Is it useful now or not? Just relax into that question. Is this helping me? Right? and be okay with it. You're not here to get it right. You're not here to get it 100% right anyway, because 100% right doesn't exist. So hopefully that has helped. Thank you for the questions, Kelly and Melissa. And thanks for joining me this morning on Chat with Matt. Much love. I endeavour to, I think I'll be able to speak next week, although I will be in Nelson, but I think it's the day before the retreat starts. So hopefully I manage to get on. Much love, my friends. Bye for now.